Hello, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of your program, Back to Reality. This is the humble host of the session, Ali, at your service, and I am here with my brother, Ali Salam, a U.S. citizen, the founder of Basira Press, and the co-author of the book, The Firmest Handle. So, Salam alaikum, dear brother. Hello, and welcome to your program.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
So, the first time we talked to sort of make this decision to what would be the topic of this session and show, you told me that let's use Iran as a superpower. Is Iran a superpower? If you ask an average person like a year ago, 2 years ago, that is Iran a superpower, the person might giggle or burst into laughter sometimes, especially those people who were imposed by propaganda and bombardment of all those misinformation and things like that. But after the first war, the 12-day war of U.S. And Israeli regime against Iran, and the second one, people might give it a thoughtful moment and then say, yeah, maybe. So what do you say? Which one is it? Is Iran a superpower or what?
If Iran wasn't a superpower, why do all these so-called superpowers basically center their policy around Iran? That Iran is number one for them. That's something important to ask ourselves, just to reflect upon, not even as a rhetorical question, as a real question to think about. The whole world is basically revolving around Iran. Why is that? And now we can see basically now the whole world is in Iran's hands with the Strait of Hormuz. Global energy markets and various markets are tanking because Iran is defending its sovereign rights. Basically, if they don't want to give Iran peace, if they want to attack and kill its civilians, okay, they're not going to sit down and let it happen. Nor should anybody who has an iota of self-respect, if they were a country, if it was any country, if they had any ounce of self-respect, and if someone was to do this to them, if they had the power to retaliate in such a way, that is their right. And then and that basically will say that you either leave us alone and respect us, or we're going to exercise some measures. And the measures that Iran took, by the way, I saw someone else note that Australia and New Zealand have similar measures along their certain waterways. And there's other countries. It's like kind of like a toll. Like you want to go on the highway, you want to pay. You want to make sure the roads doesn't have holes in it. You have to pay a toll. So this is kind of something similar to that. It's not something extraordinary or illegal, and it's within Iran's sovereign rights as the kind of controller of this. It's their waters, it's their territory. So it's not something unnatural. But a superpower is someone that can influence the rest of the world, that has economic power, that has political power, cultural power, and everything like that. But the difference that I want to know is that the way Iran is a superpower is not the same way that the United States is a superpower. It's not the same way that Europe is a superpower. And that they use this power to impose themselves upon other people against their will. And they tell those countries which policies to follow. They pick and choose their leaders and everything like that. And they spill lots of blood in order to get there. Or they trap countries in these debt schemes like with the IMF and the World Bank and all these loans. Iran's different. Iran works with the power of persuasion of the hearts, that people naturally love what Iran stands for. And Iran is simply exporting self-determination, self-respect, sovereignty, independence, and standing up for yourself against those who wish to kind of crush that. So by having all this in Iran's fingertips, it was on a trajectory of becoming a superpower, and now it's proving it. And its future is even bigger than this, because if you look at the scientific potential of Iran, many technologies in many different areas, Iran is one of the few, or maybe sometimes the only country that has it. And sanctions help to kind of put Iran under this pressure to generate that. Otherwise, they would have gotten lazy, comfortable. We're depending on imports. Sit back, drink tea, and not like, so as they say, you put something under pressure, you get a diamond out of it. So that's just in we're talking about material aspects of society right now, which is economic, scientific, and all these other types of things. The main issue, I think, is the ideology of Iran, which is that we will never, ever, ever accept humiliation. We prefer a life of dignity. And if we can't have a life of dignity, then we're going to stand up to defend a life of dignity. And of course, that will come with some costs, from the smallest cost down to the biggest cost, which is martyrdom. And martyrdom is, contrary to the Zionist media propaganda, it's not a death cult. It's not like a suicide mission. It's a preference for life, but a life of dignity, and that any other life is not worth it. Any other kind of life of humiliation is not a real life. A life as a slave, a life living on our knees to anyone except for God, is not acceptable.
So I remember for the last 47, I mean, of course I don't remember all of them because I'm not 47-year-old boy.
I was going to say you look too young.
Yeah. Thank you. But I have read that since like 5 decades ago, like U.S. Authorities and Western medias in general, they were accusing Iran and saying that Iranian people are getting isolated. Iranian officials are depriving its own people from getting the progress and the same amount of development that the whole other world are just getting benefit from. But then and probably they would say the same thing, that they do not have any infrastructure. They are camel-back riding on the streets, if there is any streets at all. So you're living proof of it. Are you like riding camelback on the streets or something? And also, 2 decades ago, they start accusing Iran of enriching uranium. So how is it possible that if Iranian people are like dealing with the Stone Age and they're enriching uraniums? And then Iran start doing the, cloning advanced, sort of technology to clone people or animals or organs for the diseases. And then Iran started to developing nanotechnology, petro-related industries, and coming with their own industrial goods and things like that. So I'm just wondering, as a normal citizen, I'm just pondering that which one is it? Is Iran a superpower or getting isolated because they are not driving Tesla on the streets? So.
Well, I did ride a camel once, but I was like an ecological tourist like getaway, which is good for like a vacation. But as far as like the normal life, obviously it's actually very kind of on par with the rest of the world here, and so if Iran was this isolated country, why would they have any business with it? And like you said, how would they come up with all this uranium technology and everything like that alongside it? So the whole like Stone Age part is just so they can brainwash the Western audience into justifying killing those people. All these people are like these subhuman cavemen. They're not really human. If you drop a bomb on them, who cares? They're not equal to us. But that's just for their audience. And they themselves, they know what is the potential of Iran. They wouldn't be attacking Iran if they didn't know what the potential was. And their main problem with uranium is actually the industrial application, because that would put Iran on par with India, with China, and with Russia in terms of economic capabilities. And Iran has already risen partially a lot to get close to that level because of its domestic manufacturing. I have all my home appliances made in Iran. My cell phone made in Iran. Even like regular consumer goods, shoes, pants, cars, pens. You look at, for example, the exact opposite would be a country like Lebanon. You can count the import dependency to like 80-90% in many areas.
Yeah.
Even a pencil is imported. A pen is imported. Like the most simplest things they don't produce themselves, which is why they have such a bad economic crisis, which is compounded also by the inflation. In fact, they don't even use the lira anymore. They're just using dollars. Is there any country in the world that uses somebody else's currency? I can't. That's the situation of Lebanon. And I'm sure they would love to copy the Lebanon model onto Iran to make it just be this weak, import-dependent country that maybe even uses somebody else's currency and its domestic transactions.
I remember like 7 months ago, like 8 months ago, some of my friends, U.S. friends and Canadians, they came to Iran as a trip, and we just went to this grocery store, and they just they just puzzled. They just because they were expecting to just find some famous brands in terms of snacks and whatever products you can find in grocery stores, and they just saw all these different Iranian weird names like as a brands and models and things like that, and they were like astounded. They were trying to buy as much as they could and try it right there. I was saying, like, keep it easy. I know it's strange. These are all like homemade Iranian things. And this picture for me, I just save it in my memory. And then I had another picture of when Iran was making homemade sort of satellite and using its own shuttles without using the mighty countries to just sending to the skies. And there was this commentators, I don't remember, it was on ABC News or CBS or whatever. And the commentator, it was like as if he was having heart attack to digest and understand, like, oh, Iranian people are capable of doing so. So have you ever encountered?
And by the way, that satellite was completely indigenously made. You want to compare it to the one that the UAE or one of these other countries launched? They didn't, these like oil sheikhs, they didn't lift a finger. They just kind of like sat back, drank their coffee out of their gold mugs or whatever, and it was like an entirely like Japanese crew who did it from like start to. So they just paid like a bunch of oil money. So they didn't really do it. It's not really theirs. They can pretend like it's theirs, but in the case of Iran, it really was 100% theirs.
And it is interesting that all these things are happening at the time that Iran was imposed under the heaviest sanctions in the history of human being. So again, you brought up the stories of, I would say, Arab countries or the countries, neighboring countries to the Persian Gulf. They were once used to be mentioned as the model of development for so many people, especially Muslim communities, that if you want to do progress, these are your examples. But one thing that was interesting for me, that so many of these countries, they import technology. They haven't come up and they haven't, developed technology. So, but again, they just wanted to make a shiny, decorative sort of image of their own country. But when it comes to the social justice, I mean, God forbid to talk about that. When it comes to the laborers, God forbid to talk about the foreigners who are working there. But you can see that they have this Formula One competition, very expensive sort of competition. World Cup has happening there. Young people go. But again, they are importing even the soccer players. They're importing the everything, the food. During this war, we understand that they are dependent to the what is this water refinery? Like 90% of their water comes from these refineries. They do not have access to the drinkable water. So when it comes to their security system, they are dependent 100% to the U.S. and probably Israeli army as well. So which types of developing system are we dealing here? Because again, I'm having this question that if those countries have access to the last model cars and the shiniest, airplane and airport system, things like that, are they developed countries? Or again, if Iran is becoming a superpower, how come Iran is not having access to all those shiny stuff? So what is the measurement of becoming a superpower? I'm just getting around the topic to understand it better.
Well, that's all an illusory way to sugarcoat being a slave.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a house of cards. A little bit of wind will blow it all away. That's not sustainable. They don't have any production. Even their food and water is not secure, let alone their security or anything like that. When they don't have anything, how can anybody claim that that's some kind of a sustainable model when they are not even secure in anything? It's just a way to kind of keep them dependent. But let's forget about war. In 2020, when there was simultaneously COVID and some kind of oil price war, they lost their tourist revenue and they lost their oil revenue at the same time, and they took a huge economic hit. Their shiny airplanes were sitting there on the runways with covers on them because they were not usable. The entire world was closed and nobody was flying. So it just goes to show that that's not a real model.
They were not ready for that crisis.
Yes, because they don't have a solid foundation. Whereas Iran's model is based on self-reliance, and that we actually do control everything that we have, and we are dependent on ourselves for nearly everything, and then the rest, whatever is necessary, can be fulfilled by imports. But the priority is domestic capabilities. The priority is looking within. So that's why Iran cannot be blown around like these other countries have been, where now their natural, many of them have just basically turned off their natural gas or oil refineries. Airports are closed down. The tourism, real estate, everything that they thought was like this glitz and glamour, it's all fake. It's all a house of cards. It's all a bubble, and eventually that bubble is going to pop. And it's a great way to keep them as good slaves, because then they answer to whatever the U.S. or the Zionists tell them as far as policies and everything like that. But this is not something that lasts forever. And even if it wasn't for a war situation, just the financial nature would lead to bubbles, real estate bubbles, stock market bubbles, these types of things. And they eventually would feel some pain somehow at some point in the future, even in a peacetime situation. So this model, it may have short-term gains and all this illusory stuff, like even the shiny cars themselves are imported. Iran has shiny cars too, and they're all made here in Iran. The newer ones especially. If you look at some of the newer models, whether from the domestic manufacturer like Iran Khodro, with like the Dena or the Tara, or some of these private makers that have license of Chinese cars, and like you see some of these luxury Chinese cars. I came from the U.S. I've never seen cars that nice in the U.S., at least among regular people. Chinese cars have really kind of taken off, and the prices are actually quite competitive. You can have a very nice car for less than what an equivalent model would cost among a Western manufacturer, and perhaps even less problems too, because many people who say that I've driven a Benz, I've driven a BMW, I say it's just a status symbol. They purposely planned obsolescence into these cars so that every couple of months it breaks down and you need to go to, and they have proprietary parts, so you need to go to a specialized BMW or Benz dealer to fix it. So it's like you're paying for a status, for a symbol, so people think, oh, he has a Benz, he has a BMW. You're paying for this symbol. So whereas other cars are more reliable. So here it's not like people are in the Stone Age, and this is especially this has been happening especially over recent years. I came to Iran first in 2021. At that time, for me, finding a Dena or a Tara on the street was like where's Waldo? I don't know if you get the reference. It's like a children's book. But now it's like it's ubiquitous. It's ubiquitous, and now it's like, oh, luxury Chinese cars, everything like that. I'm like, if this is a country struggling and suffering under sanctions, then where are people getting the money for all these things?
Exactly. So you're a journalist, and I was wondering if you can tell me that how do other journalists, especially independent ones, not the knuckleheads in Fox News, are seeing the situation, especially regarding this current war, and do they see the situation, goes ahead in favor of Iran or the U.S. and Israeli regime?
Most people are rooting for Iran. Well, first I would preface it in that being a journalist just by itself is difficult these days, because you're getting censored left and right on all the popular platforms which are consumed by the masses. You can go to alternative platforms, sure, but they don't have as large of an audience, so your reach doesn't get as much. Although it is worth it to kind of set a stake in the ground in some like Rumble or Upscroll or some of these other ones. But it's just hard to even speak to people, because they don't want the truth to get out there, because these institutions are not independent. Facebook, like all these stories about Facebook being started in somebody's garage, those are all fake. Like you look at their history, they all have like seed funding from these venture capital firms, which are basically fronts for the CIA's like soft power, like InQtel or whatever, Facebook, Microsoft, all these like garage. How many garages are there for people to start like there? And why the garage? Don't you at least have your room or something, bedroom or something like that? It's all nonsense. These outlets were created like purposefully for an agenda. Now it kind of got out of hand because people were using them. You give people the internet, they kind of use it for what they want. That's when Facebook and Instagram and all these other platforms, YouTube, they started introducing algorithms to kind of lower your reach unless you pay them. So it was like both served as a censorship model and as a revenue model at the same time. And then they did outright censorship, just like deleting your account, and then other things. And then they realized people don't want to use them anymore. So now they kind of rolled back, and now they go back to just like the algorithm model where they don't censor you, delete you, they just lower your reach, or they just delete some of your posts, so that the posts that you do have are like the most sanitized and like the least controversial. So just to be an independent journalist in this time is difficult. The rest you have, the majority of the media in the West is controlled by Zionist Jews or those who are sympathetic to the Zionist cause. This is not an imagination. You just look at how Trump gave TikTok to Larry Ellison, the former CEO of Oracle, who's losing some of their data centers here in West Asia because Iran is hitting them as a retaliation for attacks on Iranian industry. How much Larry Ellison is one of the biggest private donors to the Zionist military. He gave, and then this lady Barry Weiss gets like CBS or something like that. They're really trying to control the narrative from the mainstream. They also have some of their players in alternative media, like Infowars and Alex Jones, who pretend to be independent but push a Zionist narrative. Rebel News, which is run by Ezra Levin, and everybody can pretty much guess where he comes from.
Sure.
So to tell the truth, it's difficult, but the majority of people who are not like there to cover up the losses of America and Israel say, oh, look how much Iran's capability. If Iran's capabilities were eliminated, if Iran was obliterated, then how can the Strait of Hormuz still be closed down?
Yeah.
How can daily missile launches still take place? So people know that Iran is winning, and this is shifting the global equation, which goes back to what we were talking about, which is Iran becoming a global superpower, not just because of economics, or maybe it makes a nice car here or there too, because other countries do that. But you can't capture the hearts of the people with a nice car.
So
There's something else.
I have
There's
this
secret
question that
ingredients.
it's like a surreal, I don't know, situation for me. Then when Pete Hegseth or Donald Trump is talking, especially or Ruby, or talking about the war and describing it as if they're like talking about the Call of Duty games and things like that. And it's like they are not aware of the real situation, or maybe they are avoid receiving the real info on the ground, because they have lost like 35 aircrafts in 36 days. It's not, and then they start threatening to.
And that's manned aircraft, by the way. Unmanned, like drones, is even a higher number.
Exactly.
Which are millions of dollars per unit.
Exactly. I was like talking about the C-130 and jet fighters, but again, they're just talking as if they won this game for like 7 times. They admit it. They talk about it like
maybe
7
they think
times.
they can respawn or something like that.
So then they are threatening to hit the infrastructure of Iranian people. So that's not the face of a winner.
No, it's a desperate.
It's a desperate like cries and yearning to get something. So I don't understand it. As a U.S. citizen, how do you feel about the U.S. policy, if it's any policy at all these days under this administration?
Well, first of all, the U.S. system has never represented the American people. It's always been there as like a kind of a parasitic entity to, basically use the people as make a slavery out of them, let alone the other people who then are like they had the slavery within the U.S. or the various people that they've killed around the world to secure their resources from the colonization of Latin America, the banana republics, literally wars to make sure that the American banana corporations or fruit companies maintain the monopoly on the banana farms in those countries. So living comfortably on the blood of the people of the world. And even though American people themselves, they live comfortably at the expense of others, they themselves are not, they themselves are still viewed as cattle and like useless eaters. As I believe Henry Kissinger said, they're useless eaters. The people at the top are really the only people that matter.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of them are obviously Zionist Jews, but the just aside from that, like banks, corporations, various special interests, the U.S. exists as a parasite to suck the blood of its own people and then the people of the world, for the sake of the benefit of this wealthy elite who has now become transnational, which is like, they don't even have a national identity really. America is just their big empire, their big arms, strong arms to grab the world with. But America exists as kind of like just that tool for a kind of global elite which views themselves as just these masters of the world. So Trump is just the naked face of that. Okay, everybody else put on the smiley face of professionalism while still doing almost the same thing. And the only reason they didn't go after Iran in this way, because they knew that this would be the consequence. This would be the disastrous consequence that would happen, and they didn't want to open that Pandora's box. So they would try sanctions. They would try supporting riots. They would try, importing values like liberalism and hedonism and consumerism to get people to forget these kind of noble values that are now attracting the hearts of the people of the world. As I mentioned, it's not these nice Iranian cars that are attracting the hearts of the people of the world. It's the Islamic values and the Iranian culture and civilization, which is attracting. There's a reason why someone like me became attracted to Islam 12 years ago or so years ago when I converted to Islam. Why the martyrs of the Islamic Revolution from the 8-year war until present day, why they're my role models, not Seth Rogen or Adam Sandler or these various degenerate musicians and Hollywood celebrities and politicians. Why they're not my role models? Why did I choose these? Why am I attracted to them? And why are free people around the world in this region, like in Yemen and elsewhere, or even around the world, as far as we see even maybe in Japan, which is like very loyal to the U.S. They have no sense of like self. They don't even know who they are, unfortunately, because of the brainwashing and then mental colonialism. But even their heart has not been totally buried under that dirt of like they understand their heart that God gives everybody a sense of understanding what's right, what's wrong, even if it may be clouded or very clouded at some times. That eventually some little ray of light breaks through those clouds, and they understand what's going on. And even the Japanese person goes and pays honor to Ayatollah Khamenei, the martyr leader, or at other times maybe martyr Soleimani. There have been instances, or people in Armenia, Christians who go to the Iranian embassy and pay respects. This is a very different situation that they're used to dealing with, and so Iran has already won, and so they're in a panic mode. And to be honest, I don't know if these because they've took away all the professionalism, the fake professionalism out of their face, so that they can, because they know their empire is dying. They need to show a strong arm, otherwise they're gonna become weak. So if they didn't do these posturings in Venezuela or Greenland, they would be an empire on the decline already. Now they stuck into Iran, and the scenario that they didn't want, which is the empire on decline, is happening again, and perhaps a more rapid pace if they didn't do it. So I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Are they being fed wrong information? Are they too arrogant? It could be a combination of many things, but definitely they are lost in their delusions of grandeur. Their arrogance has blinded them, and at the same time, no matter which way they do, God is foiling their plots and their plans. Everything they do is shooting themselves in the foot. And I believe we saw this in rapid pace since the martyrdom of Qasem Soleimani. Like everything they did backfired. They thought Trump was a little bit too unpredictable for them at the time, that he was wrecking America's global relations with Europe and other countries of the world. Let's bring back that professional face again with Biden. But then they realized that that's also not working with the war against Russia, the sanctions against Russian oil, everything like that. It just shot them in the foot again. So and then they switched. Okay, let's go back to Trump, and now he'll put on the strong face. He'll make America like into this strong power again. And it's everything they're doing. No matter which way they go, is
a dead end.
Is a dead end for them.
So what were the objectives, if there's any, of this war for U.S.? Was it oil, getting away from the Epstein files? Was it dealing with Iranian nuclear power, allegedly nuclear power? weapon, or all of the above, or what?
Definitely a combination of the above. I don't want to say like it's only the Epstein files because that would just like America is already evil, and Epstein obviously is part of that because the Zionists have been controlling America since even before Israel existed, even from the beginning of America's history.
Mm-hmm.
We look at who's the Virginia was like was the first colony basically. The northern colonies didn't count because those were technically rebels running away from the British government, so they were technically independent. They eventually reconciled with the British king, but that's another story. America's story really starts in Virginia as kind of like this commercial, center for cash crops, tobacco, cotton, sugar cane. And who are the owners of these companies? Wealthy Jewish merchants.
Mm-hmm.
So they may not have run the governments they may not have been the governor of Virginia or the governor of Maryland or the governor of these colonies later to become states. But you don't need to. In fact, the governors are just the politicians are just the puppets. Who runs the show in these Western countries, in these capitalist countries, is who has the wealth, so the politicians are put into power by these people, so that the people feel like they have something more in common if this politician comes from among them rather than from among the wealthy elite. So they've had this control for a long time in the U.S. and perhaps that's part of like their long-term plan. Have this very big empire. The location of the U.S. between two seas makes it very safe.
Yeah.
They neutralize all their neighbors. They destroy Latin America, Canada. Everybody knows Canada. Nobody cares about Canada. Sorry to any Canadians. So they're a very safe empire. They have huge oceans in between them. So it's that makes them very safe to kind of basically bully the whole world because nobody has the naval power, the air power to kind of retaliate against the U.S. in a meaningful way. So the U.S. already has this kind of like supremacist mindset, the idea that they're better than everybody in the world. The Epstein files kind of just are a way to seal the deal for those who might show a little bit of independent streak to make sure they get in line. We have this blackmail on you, or it may not even just be blackmail. They themselves are sick and evil enough to want to go to such an island and do it themselves. It doesn't even need to be a blackmail. So it's just really a symbol of American and Zionist corruption. But they're not just by itself. They're not going to risk a war over that. Especially because the American people themselves, they didn't really revolt when those files came out. So they've already had their eyes on Iran for a long time, and that's because Iran. The main thing that they oppose is Iran's ideology. Many other countries have oil. Many other countries have these natural resources. The thing that makes Iran unique and which will make it a superpower is that belief that we should stand against injustice, we should stand against tyranny, we should stand for human dignity, and we have no price on our souls. At least the sincere among us. Maybe some people can wear the name Shia as a name tag and it means nothing for them and you can bribe them. But those who really have a strong soul and a strong belief, they cannot be bought, and even death doesn't scare them.
It's really interesting that U.S. is really lucky, I would say, because whenever they deploy troops to fight for freedom, they find oil in that region. It's really become one of the memes in the internet. So,
well, those are definitely they do get those things. I'm not saying that those things have no value, but the main thing is that in the Holy Quran, the Pharaoh, he says like, I am your Lord, the Most High of the people. He believed he was God.
Yeah.
And he had this arrogance. He can't stand that somebody is not kneeling to him. Martyr Ayatollah Khamenei was that person who would kneel to nobody but God. Even you bring all the warships in the world, every other leader in the world would get on their knees and make concessions.
So the whole plan or the bigger picture is that they just want to have all people to bend the knee in front of them in order not to have any source of inspiration for people in order to get themselves free from the U.S. hegemony.
Yes. So they can spread their global plan around the world. Any policy they want, the rest of the world has to follow. Sometimes not through the U.S., but through these global organizations, which are an extension of global Zionism and American arrogance. such as the UN, which is pretends to be like this impartial organization. It's not. It's totally in service to the arrogant powers. The WTO, World Trade Organization, IMF, World Bank, World Health Organization. They want to implement a plan. Every other country must follow to the T. So they want to create this kind of global hegemony where every country has to follow a certain plan, even though they didn't vote for the head of the UN, they didn't vote for the head of the WTO, they didn't vote for the head of all these other things. These are unelected people telling the rest of the world what they can or cannot do. And sometimes and they work a lot of the times they work on problem reaction solution. They create the problem, they foment the public reaction through the media, and then they offer the solution. Coronavirus was one of them. It's now like a common thing. Like it was made by like a U.S. military laboratory. In fact, the U.S. legalized the genetic engineering of viruses to make them more dangerous around 2017 or something like that. And Bill Gates Foundation has all their hands in it, and the WHO as well. They create the public reaction and they say, oh, come. Now they take this vaccine with untested technology. Iran was one of the first few countries to forbid the importing of Western vaccines and primarily relied on, and this again goes to being a superpower, primarily relying on its own vaccine, which used the traditional technology that they've been using for vaccines for decades, not like something that's never been tested before like they did in the US. And they imported some from Russia and China and friendly countries that have no history of like biological terrorism against their own people.
Speaking of vaccines, in the way of liberation of Iranian people and the sending aids by Donald Trump administration, like last week, one of the Iranian famous vaccine center, which was like 100-year-old institute, was hit by U.S. Missile, and it was a shame because I mean you don't develop bomb over there, like it's just a vaccine, and
it's because they want Iran to eventually be completely dependent, so that they can be dependent on people who they're not even good to their own people.
And Iran,
like they're not even good to the American people. Like the reason why we can't trust America in things like medicine or things like that is because look at what they've done to their own people. You look at for example, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment they did on black people in America. They secretly injected a virus into black people, and then they got spread around the community, and then they like collected data afterwards. Do you trust anybody like that with medicine or vaccines or anything like that? That's why Iran should develop vaccines domestically, because when you have science and technology in the hands of good people, they're not going to have these sick and twisted ideas on like how to like infect entire communities with diseases and watch them. No, they're going to use it for ethical purposes. So that's the reason to be independent, because when you're dependent on evil people, they're going to do harmful things to the people of this or that country, because they, again, like I said, they see themselves as gods and they see us as like cattle. They don't see us as human beings. So like a child who mischievous child who takes a magnifying glass and shines it on a hill of ants so that to torture them. That's exactly how they see us, and they devise whole like schemes around us to intentionally harm human beings. So that's another role of Iran being a superpower, is that it has all this scientific knowledge, but by people, in the hands of people who don't have these sick and twisted minds like Bill Gates or Dr. Fauci or some of these like crazy people that run American industry. Like Iran is a country that couples science with morality. Maybe it's not there yet, because there's some people who just like copy the West. They take it like they just copy the Western models. But there are many scientists here who are very forward thinking and who don't have this sick mind. And when they develop a technology, they're not trying to intentionally harm a human being. They're trying to intentionally help a human being. And many people in the world are thirsty for that because they're under the yoke of these corrupt corporations.
And Iran wanted to develop this monopoly when it comes to the vaccine as well, especially at the time of the COVID, because the whole world became a wild jungle. People wouldn't even care about other nations not having access to vaccines. Iran was sending out the vaccines, the extra amounts of vaccines they have in the country, for the neighboring countries, the friendly countries, especially those who were not wealthy countries and who have not access to the vaccines. And it was interesting for me that while so many people, like I think it was US who has stole the whole ship of vaccination, or it was like an or airplane or something, to just get the vaccination, which was headed towards another country. It was like Japan or Australia. So again, I see morality all over the story. It's not just about money, getting money, and it's going to be just business, or like the same problem we have in the pharmaceutical companies in the United States.
Yes.
So back to the other topic.
And that's why Iran poses a threat, because they want to
Iran is messing with the market.
Yeah, because the whole idea of the U.S. is that and international Zionism is that everybody's cattle, at least in the Zionist side, is everybody's goyim or whatever, and they want to harm us. They don't have our best interest, and they enjoy when we're suffering. They enjoy when people are blown up by their bombs, or when they become unhealthy because of their food, or their treatments just don't fix them and only benefit the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies. They want that kind of system. It's like a global slavery. They want to turn the whole globe into a plantation, and Iran stands in the way of that. So everything that they have, that they want to use as a weapon, Iran wants to use as something that's a blessing.
Okay.
Like science and technology is in the service of humanity rather than at the harm of the humanity. And that's something, and that's again, if Iran was not a superpower, then it wouldn't have this kind of capacity to kind of replace the U.S. and international Zionism in these kind of fields that have been corrupted, but to like kind of like decorrupt them, and because now people, their hearts are turned towards Iran, and they're going to be saying, what does Iran do?
Exactly. I'm just speaking of Iran, and people are looking for Iran and Iranian news in their news feed as well. So again, as a journalist, if people, especially at this moment when people do not trust the tabloids and mainstream media, they just want to know more about Iran, resistance, the situation, the reality behind the curtain, behind the U.S. policy and Western policy, especially when we had the case of Epstein files, which was like tip of the iceberg here, and we all know that. What should ordinary people, normal people do to understand more, to educate themselves more, to have access to more, I would say, independent media, journalists, people, and to just change the situation?
It takes time, because there's thanks to God, there's a lot of independent media outlets out there, and even like state media is like this slur that goes around. Like in our view, we're not anarchists. We don't believe that all government is evil. It's a tool, and how do you use it? Unfortunately, throughout history, it's mostly been used for evil, because it kind of like attracts. It's a very powerful tool, and it can kind of attract the most sick and wicked people, like the Epstein class and everything like that. But in our history, Imam Ali, peace be upon him, and others, prove that it can be used for justice. That doesn't mean that all the time it's perfect, but there's a large difference between kind of like a decent government with divine values that has some imperfections here and there, versus one where like their whole foundation is satanic. The whole foundation is like Epstein, and that's the difference between the U.S. and Iran. The foundation of the Iranian state model is based on divine values, the values of Abraham, Moses, Jesus Christ, and Muhammad, peace be upon all of them. There's imperfections here and there. It's a work in progress. There's more to be accomplished, and especially now that Iran is kind of like maybe suddenly thrust into this kind of superpower mode, and now everybody's looking to Iran as a model. It's going to have to be like, oh, now there's a big responsibility that comes with it, because there's been perhaps some administrations or ministers or bureaucrats or whatever that may have looked to Western models that have only like copied Western models, and now there's really not much of a difference. Now it's like, oh, now it's time for Iran to be a pioneer, to like come up with something. That doesn't mean that 100% of the West is bad.
Yeah.
But obviously there's corruption in the West, money, power, like these industries corrupt, misuse science for the sake of, like I said, harming people. Even in Europe, the food system is better than in the United States. People in Europe go to the U.S. and they complain about how they get more overweight and everything like that. So holding only the U.S. as a model is a big mistake. So this is a time for Iran really has the potential to be this like pioneer. Okay, there's some good models around the world, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, seek knowledge even as far as China. So it's not like an isolationist thing. It's really just about being anti-corruption. Which knowledge is beneficial? Which knowledge comes from like this, like for example, in the case of Monsanto, they would pay scientists to write ghost-written studies that they didn't really do themselves, but it gets published in a scientific journal. And so there's lots of, if we divorce from the corruption of those types of models, we can really lead the world and this goes back to what the martyred leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, was talking about when it came to this idea of a new Islamic civilization.
Mm-hmm.
And he said this civilization is the pioneer in science and technology and progress.
So again, some people might question our claim here that Iran is being a superpower or becoming a superpower, that if Iran is becoming a superpower, how come Iran is just one single day or 2 days have lost like most of its commanders, supreme leader, and some of the politicians and the nuclear scientists as well? So how do you respond to that?
Because Iran is still standing after.
Mm-hmm.
As simple as that. You think if you would take out the supreme leader, not just the president, not just these commanders, the symbol of the nation, you think the whole thing would fall apart. And other nations it would. Even Venezuela and Maduro. They kidnapped Maduro. Now the interim president is going to Miami, or if not going to America itself, like their American officials are coming to Caracas and meeting with them, and she's standing there and smiling. Now maybe does she actually want to be there? I don't. But that just goes to show, even if she doesn't want to be there, it's that fear. She's bending the knee out of fear. Whereas Iran didn't flinch even after the leader was martyred. There was no flinching. The course was stayed, and in fact the whole, after the leader martyred, the whole world suddenly became in Iran's hands.
Okay, how do you see the role of the martyr Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran's recent, I would say, development, and to just be in the line of getting a superpower, or at least a local power that becomes a great asset to BRICS or Shanghai, what was it, treaty?
Shanghai Cooperation.
Shanghai
Cooperation, or SCO.
So how do you see his role as well in all these development?
For the longest time, he's been talking about just an economic level, an economy of resistance, which means in a self-reliant economy. Domestic production, supporting Iranian brands, promoting exports of Iranian brands, all these different types of things to support its domestic production. Basically the opposite of the Lebanon model that I mentioned. Whereas there have been other voices in this country that's wanted to go to the route of the Lebanon model, either out of naivete or maybe there's something else behind the scenes, but whatever is the case, there were those who were kind of trying to go the opposing current, and now we see the benefit of it at the end of the day. When Iran's self-reliance has kept it standing, even as its leader was martyred and everything, and now there's war and they're targeting some infrastructure, there's not much of a disruption of public life. But in the regional countries, in the GCC countries, where they're 80% dependent on imports in many areas, food, water, the most basic things, and their economies are heavily dependent on these kind of house of cards thing, like real estate and these kind of like intangible things. Whereas here in Iran, like factories, production, domestic production, knowledge-based economies, those are all very tangible and valuable things that actually give a economy strength. You see the big difference. Like these, the UAE will probably cease to exist.
Yeah.
Whereas Iran is still standing.
So how do you see, probably that would be my last question, how did you see the Iranians' capability, especially military capability, especially in the last war and the current one?
Well, it's obviously they're the ones who have prepared for this. The Israelis and the Americans are going to run out of interceptor missiles. They're going to run out of many other kinds of missiles because, and again, their arrogance has blinded them. Their entire military-industrial complex is centered around like big and shiny things to like wow people at these like military fairs or whatever and get these big contracts and everything like that. But it hasn't proved any kind of practical benefit. It has all these bells and whistles, but it's actually these bells and whistles that make it like a faulty product to begin with. And this was tested somehow in the Ukraine war as well, where like these fancy like advanced tanks were just burning. And even earlier in the 2006 Zionist aggression against Lebanon, the so-called invincible Merkava tank was just, and now that's happening. It's happening now that
Yeah.
that Hezbollah has entered and is every day like just tank eliminated.
Yeah.
Um,
So it was like a surprise for Donald Trump when he admitted after 30 days of the war that he got shocked that because I think they expected to just decapitate the Iranian regime as they call it, and in like 3 days, and they just take down the whole administration.
they probably were hoping for a few things. They hope that maybe the like the fringe like kind of like liberal nihilists would like who take part in these riots and like stab people to death and like get the guns from the Mossad agents to start shooting, innocent people like happened a few months ago.
Yeah.
They thought that maybe like they would just suddenly like get happy by the news of the martyrdom leader and just like go like
It actually
unhinged
happened.
and go into the streets and
It actually happened way before that in 1952 at the time of the coup of Dr. Mossadegh. The first time United States were involved in, interfering in Iranian foreign policy to just, going against the legal Iranian administration. That was Dr. Mossadegh. That was the pinpoint, the first time that the U.S. interfered, and Iranian people hold grudges from that time. That why you just did that.
Exactly, but that didn't happen. There were like a few like maybe liberal neighborhoods in Tehran where you would hear some like cheering on the night before his martyrdom was announced, when there's kind of like a rumor. They went silent.
Yeah.
By the next morning they went silent, and even in the neighborhoods where you would least expect, in fact, you would be scared to hold a picture of Ayatollah Khamenei. You would think I would get stabbed to death by some of these like liberal extremists, liberal ISIS. Now it's like maybe you would think you would hear like down with the dictator, or like their silly slogans or whatever. Now you hear Allahu Akbar.
And so many of those apartments in those neighborhoods actually got hit as well.
Yes.
People become surprised that why you're hitting us as well, as if they were like expecting the enemy is differentiating between you and the supporters.
And even then, the enemy views them as a useful monkey, as a useful idiot. They don't actually like them, and they'll kill them if necessary. And they don't care if they're collateral damage. They're just a tool for them.
Okay, any last word before we just conclude the session?
The whole world is looking to Iran now, so this is an opportunity to maybe some people like you kind of like wake up in the morning, you don't realize this is something that to take seriously. This is something that Muslims, like, we have this slogan like, you're a Muslim, you're a believer. When you go out in the world, you're an ambassador of Islam. So obviously nobody's perfect. A human being is fallible. Everybody makes mistakes. The key ingredient is sincerity. So at least be sincere, so that if you make a mistake, you quickly, but try your best to be a good face for Islam as much as you can within your human, limitations. So that's the same thing here on the national level when it comes to Iran. Iran and Iranians, like we've become like these, and everybody's looking to it. Their hearts are attracted to us. So that's why I said we need to become pioneers in public policy, because the entire world now is under the shadow of Western policy, specifically American policy. Not even like, as I mentioned, there are some cases where European countries have good policies, like in the case of foods, like certain food ingredients are banned in the European Union where they're totally legal in the U.S. The U.S. is just like a Wild West for corporations to just experiment on the people or other things. Now is the time for us. Now people will start looking to Iran as a model, and now is the time to have policies that are independent. And it's not just, let's just put aside culture, the culture of Islam, the culture of hospitality, the culture of a life based on meaning. There's no meaning to life in the West anymore. Like just money. Like people's hearts are empty. People are like hooked on antidepressants. Even in a prosperous country like Japan, where they have money and they have everything, they have a high suicide rate because their life has no meaning. It's like the same day on repeat. It's like 18-hour workday over there. Just a life, just like buying. Like there's no meaning to life over there. Their families are all broken up. If a natural disaster or catastrophe happens, everybody's out for themselves. Whereas here, you see people are helping each other.
True.
You see the bakeries here that sell fresh bread. They have signs, and this is not just one. It's like you'll see across the internet signs saying like, bread is for free. Just if keep a tab on your own notebook and come after the war and pay us back if you want to. That's you don't. This is something that's totally missing from the rest of the world, and this is something that should be emphasized and refined, especially because this is just something that's latent. Because there's a lot of people, for them Islam is just the name tag, but even with that, even with this kind of like passive belief, you have a lot of beauty that comes out of it, and so that can be refined even more and perfected even more, and suddenly the rest of the world is looking to us. Because you go around the world, you go to any capital in the West, in the East, Japan, Russia, Europe, America, you go to a metro or a subway, you look at the young people, they're very nihilistic, they don't have a lot of values, so because they're all copying this Western culture of consumerism, of nihilism, of not having any meaning, of self-worship, individualism. Now the world is going to learn to us, and we can undo this kind of social disease and all the many people when the world learns from us, many of the social problems of the world will begin to heal, and they don't even have to become Muslims to do it.
No.
They can just learn from our values as a kind of on a human level.
And we will learn from them as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for your contribution to this topic, and hope to have you in our future program as well.
Thank you again.
So much, dear viewers, and you know the drills. Please share your thoughts and feelings in the comment sections, and please do subscribe us and spread the words by sharing our content to your beloved friends and family. Till another episode, bye bye and take care.